Now, after Nixon, there was this brief period of President Carter, which many see was elected as a kind of backlash to Watergate, Vietnam. And there was a lot of crises going on at that time, a global recession, the Iran hostage crisis. But some see that he lost re-election against Reagan because he was perceived as being weak. So Reagan comes into the White House, and domestically is probably most well known for the war on drugs and the explicit campaign against that, led by his wife, Nancy Reagan, but also as the one who beat the communists, right? The fall of the Berlin Wall. So a lot of his campaign rhetoric and policies were directed at fostering this, again, this American ideal and this American identity, opposed to Soviet communism. And so those dichotomies are still with us today, right? The way that conservatives and liberals and neoliberals demonize the language of socialism, the language of communism, and conflate communism with forms of totalitarian regimes. So all of that stuff is still with us, even though it was, decades before you were born. But if you still aren't convinced, there is a recent recording that came out of Lee Atwater, who was the chairman of the Republican National Committee and an advisor to Bush, about him talking about the code that was used to gain the Southern vote. Now, I will include the link in the comments, and just a trigger warning that he uses racist language inside of it, but it's just an explicit statement of how terms like states' rights, terms like welfare, terms like law and order, whenever a policymaker uses that, they know that that is code for and directed at a certain population. They know that those policies will adversely affect these populations and effectively continue to exclude them and exert explicit and implicit violence upon their bodies and their communities. So you can listen to that short excerpt if you want to. The link is in the comment. Now, just to kind of continue the connection to here with ads and the way that these the rhetoric and the policies played upon these dichotomies and these ideals and realities, here are a few ads from Ronald Reagan.
It's morning again in America. Today, more men and women will go to work than ever before in our country's history. With interest rates at about half the record highs of 1980, nearly 2,000 families today will buy new homes, more than at any time in the past 4 years. This afternoon, 6,500 young men and women will be married. And with inflation at less than half of what it was just 4 years ago, they can look forward with confidence to the future. It's morning again in America. And under the leadership of President Reagan, our country is prouder and stronger and better. Why would we ever want to return to where we were less than 4 short years ago? There is a bear in the woods. For some people, the bear is easy to see. Others don't see it at all. Some people say the bear is tame. Others say it's vicious and dangerous. Since no one can really be sure who's right, isn't it smart to be as strong as the bear? If there is a bear.
All of that gets us to 1988 and the infamous Willie Horton ad campaign that was used by George Bush Sr. against Michael Dukakis, who was the governor for Massachusetts. And in this ad, he used one case of an incarcerated person that was on furlough. That was this furlough policy that was in Massachusetts at the time, as to create this boogeyman that was supposed to show how Dukakis was weak on crime, and would be a weak leader. So here are those infamous Willie Horton ads, as followed by an excerpt of someone commenting on those ads.
As governor, Michael Dukakis vetoed mandatory sentences for drug dealers. He vetoed the death penalty. His revolving door prison policy gave weekend furloughs to first-degree murderers not eligible for parole. While out, many committed other crimes like kidnapping and rape, and many are still at large. Now Michael Dukakis says he wants to do for America what he's done for Massachusetts. America can't afford that risk.
I was angry. I was very angry because I saw through it right away. I saw the ad where they had these guys coming out of prison, and the black guy was the only one who looked up at the camera. So I said, these are diabolical minds behind this thing.
That's the guy to be afraid of. This was calculated to emphasize the one African American here.
Race is a powder keg. It deserves to be in many ways, and Lee got close to that powder keg and was setting off sparks nearby.
This was a piece of literature that was being distributed in a number of states. All the murderers and rapists and drug pushers and child molesters in Massachusetts vote for Michael Dukakis. I thought it was despicable.
Then they had the rape victim, this woman, go on tour and talk about in explicit details what happened during the rape. She was raped twice.
It was a so-called independent committee ad where they simply used Horton's face.
One was Willie Horton, who murdered a boy in a robbery, stabbing him 19 times. Despite a life sentence, Horton received 10 weekend passes from prison. Horton fled, kidnapped a young couple, stabbing the man and repeatedly raping his girlfriend.
The candidate and the people around him deny any responsibility. Anybody who believes that believes in the tooth fairy.
I just wonder whether there isn't a tinge of racism.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't even think many people in the South know what race Willie Horton is. I think that's totally irrelevant.
I don't believe that. I think he was used primarily because he was black. Like Lee said before he died, you don't holler nigger, nigger, nigger anymore like you did 30 years ago. You know, you got to be more subtle than that. It wasn't very subtle at all to me.
Everybody saw how provocative it was, and so it got a tremendous amount of free airtime. Who knows how many times hooked up to jumper cables got repeated in South Carolina, and who knows how many times Willie Horton's scowling, angry face of a killer was televised absolutely for free.
So those of you who are interested in media and sensationalization and how all of that contributes to the formation of the identity of the criminal and how it contributes to all of the implicit biases we all have, Willie Horton is central to that. Now, I just want to show one image of Willie Horton, recent image of Willie Horton, so that we can, maybe not have that problematic, iconic image of Willie Horton from the 80s as our lasting image of him. Now, let's close with a little appendix here. On May 1st of 1989, and some of you may have been following this through some recent documentaries, was the infamous case of the Central Park Five. Now, central to that was none other than Donald Trump. So a lot of Donald Trump's rhetoric and policies and ways he sees the world are rooted exactly in this time period. And he would constantly take out ads into addressing the society that was falling apart and that were explicitly racist and classist and things like this. And one of the most famous ones was this ad he took out in the New York Daily News on May 1st of 1989, talking about the Central Park Five. And so I'll just read some excerpts from this, but the link will also be down in the comments. What has happened to our city over the past 10 years? What has happened to law and order, to the neighborhood cop we all trusted to safeguard our homes and families, the cop who had the power under the law to help us in times of danger, keep us safe from those who would prey on innocent lives to fulfill some distorted inner need? What has happened to the respect for authority, the fear of retribution by the courts, society, and the police for those who break the law, who wantonly trespass on the right of others? What has happened is the complete breakdown of life as we knew it. How can our great society tolerate the continued brutalization of its citizens by crazed misfits? Criminals must be told that their civil liberties end when an attack on our safety begins. Let our politicians give back our police departments power to keep us safe. Unshackle them from the constant chant of police brutality, which every petty criminal hurls immediately at an officer who has just risked his or her life to save another's. We must cease our continuous pandering to the criminal population of this city. Give New York back to the citizens who have earned the right to be New Yorkers. Send a message loud and clear to those who would murder our citizens and terrorize New York. Bring back the death penalty and bring back our police. And of course, now we're living through that. The explicit language of racism and classism and sexism that is at the center of this presidency, not just him as a personality, but all of the policies that surround it. And we'll look here at one of the moments in the debate in 2016 where the language of law and order becomes central to the rhetoric and policies of this administration.
We have to bring back law and order. Now, whether or not in a place like Chicago you do stop and frisk, which worked very well, Mayor Giuliani is here, it worked very well in New York, it brought the crime rate way down. But you take the gun away from criminals that shouldn't be having it. We have gangs roaming the street, and in many cases, they're illegally here, illegal immigrants, and they have guns, and they shoot people. And we have to be very strong, and we have to be very vigilant. We have to know what we're doing. Right now, our police, in many cases, are afraid to do anything. We have to protect our inner cities because African-American communities are being decimated by crime.
Your 2 minutes expired, but I do want to follow up. Stop and frisk was ruled unconstitutional in New York because it largely singled out Black and Hispanic young men.
No, you're wrong. It went before a judge who was a very against police judge. It was taken away from her, and our mayor, our new mayor, refused to go forward with the case. They would have won an appeal. If you look at it throughout the country, there are many places where
the argument is that it's a form of racial profiling.
No, the argument is that we have to take the guns away from these people that have them and that are bad people that shouldn't have them. These are felons. These are people that are bad people that shouldn't be. When you have 3,000 shootings in Chicago from January 1st, when you have 4,000 people killed in Chicago by guns from the beginning of the presidency of Barack Obama, his hometown, you have to have stop and frisk. You need more police. You need a better community relation. You don't have good community relations in Chicago. It's terrible. I have property there. It's terrible what's going on in Chicago.
So there you have it. Law and order politics.